Hello, everyone. This is Andrew Berman. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. Super excited to have you today. Today, we are going to be discussing leveraging AI-powered document automation and key servicing tasks. So please, listen, if you're like me, you're easily distracted. I'm going to do this right now, and I'm going to actually shut off my phone, turn it to mute, and just kind of give us an hour. I promise you, we will not go over 2 o'clock, East Coast time. So excited to have you joining us today. And with me today, I'm excited to have actually joining me. We've got Greg Council and Keith Mullen. Greg, Keith, you guys there?
I'm here.
Fantastic. And everyone, I do apologize for starting a little late. I had a little problem in my studio, so I'm going to try to skip actually some of the preamble that I normally do while we're waiting for everyone to get in and sign on, because we do have a good group of people that's already on here. But listen, this is about you. We want to know actually what questions you have, so please use that question box to answer questions. You should see it on the right-hand side of your screen. Keith, I think I don't see your camera. I don't know if you want to show your pretty face. I mean, listen, if they're okay with seeing me, I'm sure they'll be okay with seeing you. There we go. Fantastic. All right, gentlemen, and I am going to turn the presentation. Right, Greg, I'm turning it over to you, right?
No, to Keith.
Okay, it's Keith. All right.
All right, let me see if I can grab it.
Okay, here it comes in 3, 2, 1. There. Oh, wait, no. 3, 2, 1, and there we go. All right, and in just a minute, there we go. We see actually Keith's screen. And so listen, we are going to have some polls that we're going to, or a poll that we are going to be launching. So everyone, this, like I said, it's interactive. We want your questions, we want your feedback in the polls. Don't be shy. My grandfather always said, the only dumb question is the question you don't ask. So
absolutely. Who is going to run the show? I apologize for asking that basic question.
Yeah, so you're going to run the PowerPoint, and if you have any difficulty, I've got a copy of the PowerPoint right here, so I could download it if you want.
Why don't you go ahead and do that?
Sure. Give me 1 second. I got the revised deck. I am always prepared because stuff like this happens, and but I'm going to open this up right now. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to take back controls. Okay, and here we go. Let's just change the presenter. I'm going to make myself the presenter. Okay, and PowerPoint. Hold on for a second, folks, while I just load this up. I appreciate everyone's patience. Okay. All right, now everyone should see my screen. Or everything looking good? Oh, nope, not yet. Now you should see my screen. Okay, I'll turn it into presenter mode. Okay, there we go. You should unpause. Now you see my screen. All right. Greg, Keith, you see my screen okay?
Yep, and mine's a blank white panel. There we go. Okay, now it's back. I see all of them.
Fantastic. All right. Beautiful. All right, guys, take it away.
Take it away. My name is Keith Mullen. I have been outside legal counsel for over 38 years, at several big law firms and recently joined Saxony Partners, where my mantra during my legal practice was legal information as data has value, which was information I picked up by attending industry conferences. Early on in the days of eSign and MISMO, I was on those committees that came up with mortgage industry standards and the like. And I now am taking my knowledge of the legal content and focusing on using AI to take legal content out of source documents and into legal documents, and then also use the AI to take the content out of the legal documents. Great.
Thanks, Keith. I'm going to finish the show, so to speak, just talking a little bit about kind of the basics of machine learning or AI applied to tasks like this. I am the Vice President of Marketing and Product Management at Periscript, a technology vendor. But I promise not to be salesy at all. I'm just going to be focusing on the technology and giving you the lay of the land. So with that, Keith, let's get into it.
You bet. My portion will be very practical and covering two use cases that I have experience in. And so I'm going to go down to the next slide. Hang on here. There we go. So we're going to talk about uses of AI in mortgage finance. And I'll be showing you and talking about those two use cases. When I'm done with that, Greg's going to come in and he's going to demystify all the mystification around AI. And it'll be hocus pocus, but it'll be clearly very understandable. So the first use case, get over there. And I'm trying, here we go. So the first use case is going to be commercial loans. It's going to be reporting, covenant compliance, and the monthly, quarterly, and annually reporting that drives bankers and servicers crazy. The second use case is going to be home loans, jumping over on the resi side. And we're going to talk about using AI to pull information out of source documents. That information would then go in to prepare and create the loan documents themselves. Going over the next slide. Here we go. All right, but before we even get into that, let's step back and go way back and talk about the key drivers, the key sources of concern and reasons why people like us are pushing to use AI and other tools in the everyday work we do in finance. Clearly, as the first bullet says, information as data is important. Back in 2005, when I was working in the MBA tech committee when it first formed, we had a big worker with a big belly and he had a barcode on his stomach. And that was there just for one thing, is that everything's about data, and we're going to maybe even have that data on our belly. So it's all about data, 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 data. Next bullet is, of course, the current process, the manual eyeball collection, the keystroking, the mistakes, the disconnection, the inability to run a PowerPoint like I'm having troubles here. It's the process is just incredibly inefficient. And it is so inefficient. In fact, it's actually, at some point, it's even personally discouraging. Also, what we have here is that we have multiple use and users. Everybody's coming in from a different perspective with a different appetite and a different process. And also, again, this can go on and on. It's time intensive. Time is money. We hear it. We're sick of hearing about it. But our competition is getting things done faster, and we need to be faster with that. So what's the value of information? Well, it easily touches on these three bullets. It's financial. It's driving costs up. It's driving our return down. Next, data can be very important and drivers of asset value decisions that revolve around risk. And finally, importantly, and even getting bigger and bigger, there's the compliance issue. Regulations are growing. There's a good reasons for them, but we need information and we need it quickly, and having it on a piece of paper on a spreadsheet and not in data format slows that process down. Also, there's frankly just internal requirements, internal procedures and processes that are unique to your institution, and having everything in paper in a spreadsheet is a losing proposition.
Hey, Keith.
Yes.
Hey, before you go to the next slide, I was just curious. I mean, there's a lot of drivers there. I was curious about with inefficient processes, we often see, at least our organization often sees, there's kind of a corresponding data quality issue. How big of a problem is accuracy of data within these really inefficient processes?
Oh, it's an incredible driver. In the resi space, wrong data in your documents could force you to actually buy back the loan if you sold it into the secondary market. And,
Wow.
and also there's the additional problem is that even when you go through a 2 eyeball process, like one eyeball does it, another person comes in, does it fresh anew, that doesn't really give the assurance that both people didn't make that mistake. So while we've grown accustomed to certain levels of risk, everybody wants to drive that factor to where there's a 1, 0, 0 on accuracy.
Understood. Cool, thanks.
You bet. Oh, I'm gonna flip over to the next slide here. I am so clicking. This is operator error. Okay, so let's jump into commercial mortgage loans and use an AI to pull out the information we need for doing covenant compliance. And what am I not doing here, gentlemen? I need to be taking over control of this, and I cannot see. I'm sorry.
So right now I'm controlling the deck. So you just got to, yeah, you
bet.
just let me know when you want me to admit.
Click on one and twice, and it'll take us to the next slide, I do believe. I'm sorry about this, everybody. So uses of AI, we're going to jump into it, and one more click. We're going to talk about reporting and covenant compliance. Next slide, please. Okay, so usage and another click. Uses of AI pointing at reporting. There's different types of reporting, and it's often there's confusion as to what people mean. But the bigger definition is financial information. It's the profit and loss statement. It's the quarterly income. It's the quarterly sales. It's all the financial information that the underwriting group looked and used in determining whether to close the loan. It's now being used on a quarterly or annual basis to check the blood pressure and the health of that borrower during the term of the loan. It's also asset information. It could be leasing information if it's a commercial building that's being leased. It could be widgets, number of widgets that are sold out the door. It could be an inventory. It's all, again, all the information that can give the banker and the servicer an early warning that there's death on the horizon, that the loan's going south, and they need to immediately oversee and regulate and keep their eye on that borrower and that asset. And there's also covenant information. There's things like, I will never do X, I will never do Y. So you ask that to be reaffirmed on a regular basis. In fact, the borrower in a lot of commercial structures, when they send in the financial information, the asset information, or something about the covenant, they'll include a certificate where they swear again, I swear to God and to every court, that nothing has changed. Those are forms, and all of that are forms that AI is particularly uniquely gifted at grabbing. And next slide, please. Okay, so currently right now, doing this loan level reporting can take 30 to 60 plus days. And the process has not advanced or changed since the introduction of, are you ready for this? Next click. And do 2 clicks for me. Spreadsheets. Spreadsheets have been around for how long, everybody? Back when I had hair, we had spreadsheets. And we're still working in spreadsheets. What's this about being innovative and changing? Another 2 clicks, please. And email, one more click. I'm a military brat. There was a phrase called FUBAR. Email is one big FUBAR. It's around and around. Someone's not here, wrong email address. Someone sends it to the wrong place. They're on vacation. Any reporting thing or communication that needs a quick decision, and you jam that process through email, that is totally inefficient. So at loan level reports, 30 to 60 days sometimes can become 90 days. So what does that look like? So there's a covenant that says that they'll keep no more than X amount of widgets in the warehouse. And all of a sudden now they have ×3, and you don't hear about it for 90 days, 60 days. Wow. By then they've hired bankruptcy lawyers and they're ready to file bankruptcy. So this process really worries regulators. It really worries the executive suite. Next slide, please. This is a slide that you would never do. You would never do slides with this much stuff in a slide because it actually puts you to sleep. I'm falling asleep looking at it. But what this is, if you do one more, just do a series of clicks for me here. A series of clicks with the bottom line of all this is taking at the closing, at the set up the reminder, if you can back up again, set up the reminder and the due date and the 30 to 60 dates. These are all the people and all the tasks that they're doing. It is absolutely task laden in a process that relies on putting stuff on spreadsheets and communicating in email. It's step after step after step that can be sidestepped. I'm trying to keep myself awake here. This is so sleepy, this slide. It can be sidestepped by doing an AI grab and feeding it all into a database and automating all the information in and out. Next slide, please. So the solution is to use AI to locate and extract reporting terms and covenants in loan documents. And also, the bigger picture is, oh my gosh, let's improve this process. We can't be 30, 60, 90 days. In fact, I know of some banks that actually, the production people, the ladies and men who actually find the loans and book the loan, these reports and the gathering this information is often thrown back to them. You're pulling them off the line of finding loans to where they're spending 30, 40% of their time doing this process. So it's slow. You have the wrong people who are finding money, not finding money, so your income stream comes down. It's slow. You're not catching bad things soon enough. And then the third bullet here is that you also are eyeballing the materials that come in. So it's just eyeball after eyeball in a process that is incredibly slow. So if you can give me another click, and for each of these, so we use the AI to validate the information as it goes on and as it gets in the database. Next, we're going to improve the process. Next click, which is getting rid of that whole email going around and around by doing reporting in a web-based tool. And finally, one more click. When stuff comes in, we're going to have a communication through that pipeline, AI looking at stuff again, and we can dramatically, we can turn that 60, 90 days into inside 30 if we are smart, we use AI and a web-based process.
So Keith, something just occurred to me. You know, a lot of focus when we're talking about AI and everything is on process automation, but it seems like a lot of this, the solution is also on the process improvement or process reengineering piece of it. Is that
absolutely
right?
Absolutely. And frankly, where we see the process, just backing up and taking a little rabbit trail here, the financial institutions have done well and invested IT money really heavy on the consumer side. For you and I to get an app and find out where's our checking account to apply for a loan, but over on the commercial lending side, there is not that same investment. So this is just a matter of investment dollars using AI, which we know is priced right and is very capable, and web-based solutions on the communication, which is what I do. This is what you and I do, Greg. It can change that process, and in a process that will be smooth, that'll have better quality control, and frankly, it'll be a better experience for the customer as well.
Got it.
Did I answer your question, Greg?
Yeah, no, thank you.
All right, next slide, please. Because what we can't do is have the ex-lawyer talking the whole time, right? Okay, here are the benefits. It's what you know out of, you know, technology or MBA or your process 101 class now in high school, is that you're gonna better costs, lower costs brings up your efficiency ratio. Your risk management gets much better because now you have insight, because you can get insight into the borrower quickly. Regulatory compliance, as they come up with new stuff, and they will, you'll be able to actually roll it out because you're doing it all on the back end. Well, relationships will improve because the borrower doesn't get pounded all the time with one person, second person, third person sending them emails. And fourth, now that you actually are more efficient, you can actually hit your enterprise objective by actually growing the institution. Now, the next slide is going to show a bunch of subpoints in that, but I'm not going to slow us down for all those points. And so to sum it up, go to the next slide, please. And one more click. So here, we're actually make me stop talking and intro the poll question, please.
Fantastic. I'm going to launch our poll question right here. So give me just 1 second while I load this. Everyone, we need your assistance giving us your feedback on this. So I'm going to launch the poll. And here we go. Hopefully you should see this up on your screen. So what level of AI-based document automation for commercial or residential lending has been implemented in your organization? So just tell us right now, if you could please share this. We just want to get actually just at least 50% of the people that are here with us to vote. And right now we're hovering just over 20%. So first one is haven't implemented and do not have plans, haven't implemented but are actively planning for it, have implemented and are using AI for some processes, or have implemented and using AI for most of your processes, or your outsource document processing. So please, we are right now, all right, we're fantastic. We're at 60%. We're going to close the polls in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm going to share the results on the screen. All right, everyone should see the results on our screen. So the winners here, we got a tie here. Haven't implemented but are actively planning for it, and have implemented AI for some processes. So listen, you guys are out there with mortgage bankers. Is this kind of in line with what you've seen with other mortgage bankers?
I think Keith will probably have more to comment on
Absolutely.
it as far as the rationale, but from a general perspective on just adoption of automation, there a lot of organizations are still kind of in this planning preparation phase, with some doing some limited type of adoption. So we've still got a long way to go, at least from the perspective of our company.
And I would agree with that. The big banks, of course, are all over it. Their investment dollars are in the billions in terms of money center banks. But as you get down to 25 to top 30, 40 banks, it falls off appreciably, where all the money from the is going over on the consumer side. I think what will be the tipping point, and there are ways where you can implement technology and do what bankers always like to do, which is pass the cost on to the borrower. There are ways to do that on the commercial side in the reporting, for example. We're going to jump into a minute on the resi home loan documentation side. That dollar amount to do your loan docs is a frozen dollar amount, but it'll be done by the service provider, because AI will cut their costs in half of their eyeball process. So it can happen if you are thoughtful about it, if you understand the business use case and you understand the pricing environment that it sits in.
Great, fantastic. All right, I'm going to hide these results here and let you continue on.
You bet.
Hold on, let's get that screen back up here.
All right, so now we're going to jump into AI in the resi home loan space. Where we're going to focus on here is at step number 4. The first 3 steps, everybody's aware. If you bought a house or if you're having to deal with this, there's all the submission items which come in as number 1. Number 2, there's all these third-party documents which come crashing in. It all comes from mortgage company. It does the underwriting, puts it all together. For example, I know one money center bank, that package is 2,600. It's a 2,600 page single PDF. They outsource it and eyeball it on an outsourced basis. But we're going to focus on here, which is step number 4, which is preparing the loan documents. And so if you could do a click, we'll show an arrow, and then another click will get us to the next slide. So at stage 4, currently, there is also, for the loan document fulfillment provider, A single PDF comes in with all the documents that are the source materials that contain information that goes into the loan documents. Never mind that in steps 1, 2, and 3, particularly step number 3, if the mortgage company has that material in a database, the party and person preparing the loan documents are going to say, I don't care. I want to see the source documents because I'm not going to rely upon your mistake in your database. So it gets all done again here, and it's a 2-step process where one person looks at all the documents. Actually, one person has to split them up into separate documents, put them in their document management system, look at all the documents, the fields, type it in to the document repository, the database from which the loan documents are done, and then a second person comes in and reviews it. So the tasks are, they determine what are the missing documents. 2, they got to find and retype the key information. 3, they got to figure out what information or documents are missing. 4, they got to go, okay, which of this stuff is conflicting? And this is a slow process that frankly, they have 48, 72 hours to get it done. What can be done with AI and with process improvement, all that can be changed into, frankly, a matter of hours or half a day. Next slide, please. Okay, finally here, you actually only get to see something besides listening to something. So this is Periscript's tool, which I've worked with and I absolutely love, where they take the single PDF and through learning on hundreds, actually we're going to be working toward 1,000 documents, the system will be able to identify where the break is on the documents. And part of the process as we teach it is what you see in the draw out box on the left that has the gold or yellow band. If you can back up on that slide again, I'm still on that one slide previously. That is a document that the system says, I don't know what this is. Part of the learning process is that we teach it as to what these documents are, because on the pullout on the right, which has the blue box at the bottom, that's Periscript's. That's where the system says, hey, I found the document, I know what it is. And then in the middle is some what the document looks like in a PDF, and then the green text is what the document looks like using the Periscript's software. Next slide, please. So you automatically pull out stuff. Next is you automatically separate the documents. Next, you pull out the data in the fields you want. And in this example here, where we have a document where it was 100% pull out, and you can see that the document's there on the right, and then we pull out the left panel, enlarge it on the right-hand side, and it's your bread and butter provisions that have been pulled out, and we'll talk about the confidence factor in a minute, and are ready, and that will be imported into the database for use in the loan documents. Next slide, please. So it finds key information. Then once it's extracted, it can be displayed to you in several different formats. The one at the bottom, the larger one, I really like because the columns tell you different things about each data. What really attracts me, besides I'm just sort of weird, is that in the parenthetical, it'll actually give us the confidence rating or the confidence factor that the AI has in that document field. Interesting enough, AI is trained on correct documents, so it'll be trained on 1,000 examples of the 1003 that have already been eyeballed and verified as being correct. That way, when it sees something outside of that correctness span, it raises its hand and says it's not correct. So you can get to 100% accuracy. Next table, please. Next slide, please. I'm sorry. So you identify, and then in terms of it will identify and output the fields. You can do it in a spreadsheet, which is lower right, or you can do it with a CSV file in the upper right, the upper left. And from there, you can, with the CSV file, you can, of course, import it out. So you can identify missing information or inconsistent information. And next slide, please. So wrapping it up, AI pointed at the closing package can do all those 4 important tasks. Verify no missing documents. Second, find and retype key information. Third, verify there's no missing terms. And 4, verify there are no conflicting terms. It can take a eyeballs from two teams, frankly, 45 minutes to 2 hours to do all that. The AI is much quicker, and frankly our approach is that with paying your people that much money, it's really easy for us to get under that price quote by a long amount. So we automate these manual tasks, get rid of the problem, and now labor can focus on real problems, not just using their eyeballs looking at the screen all day long. Great.
Cool, thanks, Keith. Andrew, I'm going to go ahead and run my own presentation, so if you want to give me control.
Sorry about that, I wasn't prepared to run it, guys.
Oh, I'm a control freak. I've got a lot of wonderful build out slides that I spent so much time on, I have to control them.
My excuse is twofold. I'm a lawyer and I'm old.
All right, so I'm showing my screen. You should see my screen. You should see this section header, demystifying AI. So hopefully Keith gave you some good insights as to the value of applying document automation using AI on processes, you know, improving processes, the controllability of processes, the accuracy, the access to data, all that kind of great stuff. My intent is not to pour cold water on this thing, but I want to shed some light and to kind of pull back the curtain, so to speak, with respect to all the different ways you can do automation and process documents and what's going on in the industry, because it's not easy. Let's start with this veritable alphabet soup of jargon and buzzwords and three-letter acronyms and abbreviations out there. And ultimately, the thing I want to leave you with here on this slide is that the market and the solutions available have grown to the point where there are just a number of options out there, each making their own claims, using and doing their best to attach to sophisticated technology. In full disclosure, we do the same thing. You've got to do that to some extent. The problem, though, is it doesn't make it easier for you as the potential user of this technology to make any sense of it and to select the right software. So let's forget about all of these technological advances and things, and forget about features and functionality and focus on what's most important, understanding what needs to be done and why it needs to be done. So when it comes to document automation, I write a lot, I contribute articles and things. It's unlike any type of other enterprise software in that when you're looking at something like a procurement software workflow package or case management or loan origination software, you can quite easily identify what requirements you have for your organization and line them up with features and capabilities of package A and package B and package C. And you might want to do that or be tempted to do that with document automation software or intelligent document processing software. But the real problem with that is the major focus should be on one thing, or actually two things. First is how many tasks the software can actually automate. So if it's document classification and ID and separation, like Keith mentioned, you might be receiving a 1,000-page PDF file, and the first thing you need to do is identify all the documents and separate them out into their constituent different files. So that's a automation of a task or two tasks. The second is just as important, if not more important, is what is the level of accuracy of those tasks that can be automated? Because not every single automated task is going to be done correctly. Why am I talking about this? Is because you will see a big emphasis and a big fixation on accuracy level, devoid of any other type of measurement. Let me show you what that looks like. So if the performance of the system is the most important thing, what you need to understand is the percentage of those tasks that can be automated, and multiply that by the accuracy of those automated tasks, and that will yield the system performance. And why this is important is if you're focused only on accuracy, let's say I want 98% accuracy because I measure my organization and I've got 95% accuracy right now. If I have 98% accuracy, yet I only can automate 5% of those tasks, the system performance is somewhere just below that 5%. And I don't think any organization wants that. There's no reason you're going to spend tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars and do process reengineering just for a close to a 5% gain. That's just ridiculous. And when it comes to high performance systems, there are a lot of factors that need to be taken into consideration. Unfortunately, I think that we're headed for this proverbial Gartner trough of disillusionment, where there's this frothiness around excitement of using AI, or more importantly, machine learning portion of AI to do all these really, really cool things. Treating machine learning as a silver bullet. But it's hard stuff. Anytime when the focus is on performance measured by precision or accuracy, that means that you got a lot of work ahead of you, and there's a lot of considerations that need to be done. And an example is you have to choose the right technology for the right process. And what I mean by that is understanding what types of tool sets you can bring to bear to solve any given problem. Even for things like simple forms, it's not as straightforward as you might think. Let me give you an example. This is one example of a form that was scanned in and sent in, and that's received, and that's something commonly you'll see. But what happens if the manner in which the document is captured, whether it's a fax machine or some other type of the setting of the capture mechanism, it could be even mobile capture, stretches that or distorts that form out to where you've spent all this time trying to identify where these fields are, the data is that you want, and then it all comes to nothing because the quality of the image or the way that the image comes in or the page comes in just throws everything out the window. So the reality is that things, even on forms, whether they're scanned in or faxed in or they're digitally born documents, if you don't take into consideration all these types of image quality types of things, you're not going to really get the performance you're expecting. And out of the box, let's be careful about when we use out of the box capabilities, because while there's a lot of benefit of having things pre-configured, it's a high probability that the data that was used to create these out of the box capabilities doesn't quite match the data that you have, or it doesn't quite match the requirements that you have. So it only gets you part of the way. So let's talk about some of the functions and things that intelligent document processing is designed to do. Keith talked about the two big ones, right? Classification and then data extraction. When we classify documents manually, it's a pretty simple thing for us to do. We are presented with different types of documents and told this is an agreement, this is a form, this is an appraisal. So by just looking at a few of variations of that, our brains do a really good job at sussing out all the important types of attributes that really help us understand and differentiate between document A and document B. Arguably, you're doing two things at once. One is you're looking at the text to see if there are any clues. It is as simple as looking at the title of the document. But you might also look at visual elements. I can say that one of the easiest ways to discern an appraisal from any other document type is all of a sudden you see some pictures of properties and things like that. Or you see the form and look at the form structure, and just by glancing at it, you can easily say, oh, this is a comparison. This is the comparables of property A, B, C, and D. And we're doing that all in conjunction to identify the best way of identifying documents and separating those out. When we apply AI, or more importantly, machine learning, the machines just don't know what to look at. They're really novices, almost infantile in their approach. And it's really important to provide context or clues as to what to look for. And just as importantly, provide sample information. So samples are going to be a major factor in success. And generally, the more samples, the better, regardless of what you might be told in the marketplace. Things like low shot or in shot types of learning, where you only need to provide it with just 4 or 5 samples. Use that advice or guidance at risk, because in machine learning, more data is always better, and it typically yields better performance. So when it comes to data extraction, if you think document classification and creation of rules and things like that are complex, it even becomes just almost orders of magnitude more difficult, because the data can significantly change. I covered a simple structured form and how we can introduce all sorts of complexities into it. But when you get to more text-heavy agreements or highly variable documents like appraisals or other types of documents where you're looking for common data, but it may be located on page 1, 2, or 3 in different places of the page, you've got to bring a lot more things to bear on it. So things like, we can use keywords. Keywords are probably the most common way of, or labels of fields are most common way of locating information. But we might, as subject matter experts, look at things like patterns, dates, amounts, things like that that help us identify, what is the monthly payment, what's the total value of the amount being borrowed, things like that. It can also even extend to the placement or location on the page. So there's a lot of time that you have to spend examining documents. Now, when we apply machine learning to that, that's really where machine learning excels, is because it can identify and work with even the most minute changes, and it can detect that. And the more data you provide it, the sample data, the better it gets in determining or understanding when something is really relevant to use as a method of finding the data, and when something is really not that relevant. Things that we may not notice when we're configuring a system traditionally on 5, 10, or 15, or even 20 samples, which is typically not the standard. Most people want to use just a few samples to configure systems. So data extraction is a pretty complex thing. Now I'm going to move now into the machine learning realm and talk more about that. And it starts with the concepts of learning. So I think every one of us has benefited from machine learning at some level. And I'm going to provide one example, being, let's say, Google image search. So let's pretend we want to search for images, and we enter in a search term that says, I want to find pictures of cats. Now, images are out there in the billions of cats and all sorts of other images. And the ability for Google image search to be able to find images of cats doesn't happen magically. There's a lot of work that is done firsthand to be able to do that. So let's look at it from a simplistic perspective. Let's just say we're treating it, image search as two types of buckets: images that have cats and images that don't have cats. So first order of business is you have to find a lot of samples of both sets: images with cats, images without cats. Then you have to label. You have to tell the system which images have cats and which images don't. That's really, really important. But you can imagine it's pretty easy to do. It's a lot more easier to do than, say, create complex rules that try to programmatically detect different kind of colors and features and things like that. Let's let machine learning do that. So once we have these tag data sets, then we can run all of these samples. And arguably, we should have millions, and the more documents and samples we have, the higher precision has. And the machine learning algorithms detect what we call features. These are attributes of each camp of samples. So we can detect and find things like, what are common colors of cats, and what are the eye shapes, and what do ears look like, and how are these positioned within the frame of the image, all to identify the most relevant feature sets or attributes that help us reliably find images of cats, and just as important, dispense with all the images that don't have cats in it. And it's a very, very similar process when it comes to document-based automation. We're just not focused on cats, we're focused on identifying document types and boundaries of documents, first page and last page, so we can separate them. And then the data and identifying all those things like fonts, like people that typically, if they're saying, don't try to use, but machine learning algorithms can certainly detect that. Ultimately, while there's a lot of talk about machine learning being able to create an adaptive type of process where you don't have to attend to it once it's in deployment and always try to go and fix it, and it continues to learn, we also believe that one of the biggest benefits of machine learning based types of capabilities is to automate the configuration, the initial configuration of these systems before they even go into production. Because truth told, That's where most of the complexity and expense is encountered within document automation to date. And it's one of the biggest factors why there has been still relatively limited adoption, as we can all attest, and certainly Keith can attest to, in terms of adoption of document automation within commercial and residential loan lending. So let's cover a hard case. I want to give you some example of, that, and build on what Keith provided in terms of, data extraction and how you can use it. So,
Greg?
Yeah.
Yeah, one quick point, one big demarcation is going to be the residential side and the commercial side. The residential side has a big push from the federal government, the CFPB, and the industry to actually come up with mortgage standards and form standards. So we're going to see more and more, it'll be form-based on the consumer side, and over on the commercial side, it'll be more natural language because lawyers are putting stuff in weird places. So with that, I'll shut up.
Well, no, thanks for doing that, because that actually, it provides a nice segue, or just the introduction to these types of use cases, because what we're talking about here is we're not talking about the form-based stuff. Again, form-based stuff is great. The more we can put it into forms, the more reliable the system or automation is going to be, but there's still challenges, as I already covered. When it comes to more text-heavy or verbose type of documents, we have to go into a whole other level of automation. So when it comes to processing data on a deed, let's say you're trying to find the legal description, they don't have reliable structures. I mean, yeah, deeds do follow, attorneys do thankfully follow some sort of sanity and try to normalize things, especially within law firms. But generally across, they don't have reliable structures when it comes to where you're going to find the specific information and on what page. And that's highly dependent on the type of property. They don't have labels. So this is, as you can see here, there's no field names or anything like that. There's no place where it says legal description, and then there's the paragraph that shows the legal description. So we have to use things, machine learning, but additional context. So one of the first things we do is we have to classify the document as a deed. We have to understand that it's a deed. And then we have to go to the page level. What pages are most likely? So we'll use classification again, remember text and visual elements, to find the page where it is most probable that the information we're looking for is on. Once we find the page, then we'll do it again, and we'll find the paragraph or paragraphs of the document on that page where the data that we need is, again, most likely to be in there. And then we'll apply, Keith just mentioned it, a three-letter acronym, natural language processing. We'll apply grammatical context. We'll start to break out the sentence into what we call parts of speech, nouns versus verbs and things like that, to be able to detect the specific information that we want to pull out of it. And you can see what an example of an output of that same deed is, where in the middle here, we've got a picture of where that legal description is actually located. So we're able to apply these new types of techniques, which are really cool. So let's look at it on a note. Note is a kind of a similar thing where it's very common. You want to be able to pull out information like the amount being borrowed and the monthly payments and the percentage rates and things like that. It's the same problem again. We don't have labels, even though arguably there should be a way to create structured forms so where we can find this information. It's not always the case. So in any other type of document that kind of follows suit, we can still apply the same types of things. So we can't really use patterns in this case, like percentages or dollar amounts, because it's really hard to discern, or could be hard to discern, between different types of values. So we have to bring to bear the same type of techniques that aren't reliant on location of information or patterns or things like that. But we have to, again, classify the document, identify the page, then go to another level of paragraph segmentation and classification. And then we apply again, looking at individual words and trying to determine, are these, do these modify something? Are these adverbs or verbs or things like that? Verbs don't really, pay can be one thing. To be able to find data like the loan amount or the percentage rate or things like that. So all of that is kind of the process we go to, and it's a whole other level of technology being applied today very successfully. In fact, we're able to see, with not too many training samples, accuracy rates or automation rates of 93% at 98% accuracy. So that's a pretty cool thing. And even more so when you can apply this pretty complex data extraction in an automated way, you can do even more automation when it comes to cross-validating the data within a single loan file, such as, you know, an audits or compliance, where you want to make sure that everything, the proverbial T's are crossed and I's dotted. We can find this automated, we can take and not only just use this automated data extraction to go into another system, but we can use it to cross-validate, which just further removes another task involved. So I want to offer a couple of things. One is first is a cheat sheet. I'm going to go through this really quickly. So these are the things you're going to encounter in the marketplace when you're looking at technology, and this is what I want to caution you or help you bring to mind. So when we talk about accuracy, it's really about accuracy, yes, but at what level of automation? Remembering that 5% automation at 99% accuracy isn't going to get what you want. You want to optimize both numbers. Out of the box is great, but pre-trained means it's not pre-trained on your data nor your requirements. So you need to take that into consideration and ask questions such as, what can I do with this pre-trained model? Can I modify it really easily? It works on only a few samples. See number 2 or see the second one. Most of the capabilities that really only require a few samples are really pre-trained. And so I want to caution you at expecting too much of systems that don't really require a lot of samples to work with. Certainly, reduction of sample requirements is something we're all working towards, but we're not there yet. Unsupervised learning, I can't stand this term. There's no such thing as unsupervised learning when it comes to complex document automation like document classification or data extraction. It's either pre-trained or it's not real. So just avoid that. Treat that, you know, don't just walk away, run away. If somebody's claiming that I can configure something and deploy in under 5 minutes, again, this is complex stuff. Don't take the proverbial presence of the easy button as the permission to go with one solution over another. Again, the focus is on really understanding the true performance of the system, and under 5 minutes is just not realistic. Lastly, this is another one that I really hate, is digital fingerprinting. I've heard that term a lot. Remember, there's a different fingerprint for everybody, and so if you're using digital fingerprinting, it's really going to be a brittle system. So the upshot: features and functionality are always secondary to system performance. Don't forget that. The technologies and techniques involved, again, should be secondary to understanding the performance and how machine learning can reduce all that heavy lifting. So the focus of machine learning should be, how can I get this into production faster at performance that I expect? And then training on your own data is always going to be superior to out-of-the-box functionality. You should always be prepared to supply and curate your own data sets. And with that, in rare cases, the more data you use, the better performance. Okay, so it's always a case that the more data is better, but we're getting better at having to reduce that sample set. And that's it.
Greg, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Keith, I appreciate it also. We do have actually a question that came from the audience, so I'm going to ask this. So can the AI review the docs before going out for signature?
Oh, absolutely, and that's what the good doc fulfillment companies, doc prep people will do. So it's that two-step review before it goes, and they'll also review it when it comes back to make sure it wasn't screwed up when it was all signed. But yes, before it goes out for signature.
Great. And what did you say actually is like the biggest misconception that you're finding in your conversations when you're talking to lenders, when they finally start to look at implementing AI solutions, you know, in their organization?
Yeah, my professional experience is I've helped do, I think it was 18 new loan production systems on the commercial side, and have done a lot of work in the mortgage warehouse side on the resi side. And it's that people think that there's not work to do, that it's just an out of the box thing. They don't really understand that that they forget that how long it took you to learn to ride a bike, right? It took you, and that they somehow think you can walk up a bike as a 3-year-old and go. And it's the same sort of thing here. It takes the right tool, the right AI company. I actually consulted with a different one before I rolled across Periscripts, and that didn't work. And then it takes the commitment from the E-suite to say we're going to give a lot of documents, and this is going to be really important because this short-term pain is going to be long-term, fulfillment with the company and help our company grow. Is that responsive?
No, I think so. Wonderful. All right, guys. Well, listen, I appreciate it, and we're actually just a couple of minutes short of an hour. So thank you for joining us for another webinar. And Keith, Greg, great information. And everyone have an awesome rest of the day.
Thank you very much. Take care.